Describe for us the intersection between artificial intelligence and human intelligence in the workplace.
Anytime we have new technology, there is opportunity, but I think we just need to be as leaders talking to our teams about what does this mean for us? And you have to be authentic and honest.
So how do we as leaders and how do we build a culture that supports this? How do we encourage this?
We always have this question of, what do we do with this? Like, is this going to displace jobs?
Hey, welcome to Dad Better. Today with me, I have Meredith Turney, conscious leadership coach and culture extraordinaire. Thanks for coming on the show, Meredith. It's nice to see you again.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure to talk with you, Jeremy.
For sure. Today, we're going to talk about the buzzword of the year, actually named by some dictionary, the word of the year, artificial intelligence. And I want to take a different spin on this. A lot of people are focusing on the technology. They're focusing on what it can do for us and how it can accelerate our capabilities in the workplace. And I instead want to discuss the impacts of people on AI, which is a thing I think that we don't really think about, unfortunately. We need to spend more time discussing. So today I want to start off with Meredith. Describe for us the intersection between artificial intelligence and human intelligence in the workplace.
Yeah, it's a really good question, or a really great concept to talk about. The way I view AI is a lot like other technologies that have come into the workplace. You think about the internet, the birth of the internet, the home computer. This is that next leap forward in technology. And I think we always have this question of, what do we do with this? Like, is this going to displace jobs? What is this going to do? And I think we're in that moment right now where we're all thinking, what's going to happen here? And so there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of anxiety, but there's also a lot of excitement about it. And so I think we just have to temper our expectations about what AI is going to be. It probably won't be as bad as some people say it's going to be, and it probably won't be as amazing as some people say. And that's kind of the nature of technology. But I think as far as the human element, what I'm seeing in the workplace right now is a lot of people are figuring out, how do I use this as part of my job effectively? And so that's mostly what I'm seeing right now, is that human intersection of, this is a great new technology, I want to use it, but what are the guardrails, or what are the things I need to have in order to use it effectively? And I know in some workplaces they're actually banning it, or even saying, hey, we need to put some guardrails on this. And so I think we as humans are trying to figure out, what is this and how do we use it effectively?
I think we could spend an entire episode discussing that exact concept, right? Because it is a transformative technology. There's no doubt about it. I see a lot less of it in my LinkedIn feed these days, which a lot of people consider that means that it's dead and nobody wants to talk about it. But I couldn't agree more that one of the biggest challenges that we have right now with this technology is, how do we sort out the right way to use it? And we're going to explore that a little bit. But I think that you hit the nail on the head in that it's a new technology, it's a transformative technology, but it's different than like the iPhone, right? When the iPhone came out, it was also a transformative technology, but it was just a new computer that I had in my pocket. And now I can talk to people and I can play with my apps and go on Facebook on my phone. That didn't impact my job. Well, I guess you could argue that it probably did, because I'm surfing, Facebook while I'm working. But the concept of AI has truly given all workers of all different types a new toolbox, right? A new tool in their toolbox to use to make themselves and their jobs better. So along the lines of the culture idea, right? So I believe that the killer app for large language models is communication. It's sort of like Google 2.0, right? Just like the iPhone came in and transformed our workplace, or not our workplace, it transformed our society in many different ways. Large language models have produced a way for your average human to have a conversation with a computer in ways that are more natural, right? Something we learned in human-computer interaction classes early on is that computers and people are really bad at interfacing with one another because it's artificial. There's no physical tactileness to it. It's just a digital screen that you're clicking with a mouse, and that's, or you're touching with your fingers, and that's kind of the best that we could do. So how do we think, Meredith, that this artificial intelligence transformation is going to impact the culture of teams, given that it has produced a new way for us to interact with machines?
Yeah, I was reading an article yesterday in preparation for this discussion about AI, and it was talking about how it's given a competitive advantage to some members of teams that are using it. and other people who don't know how to use it on the teams are falling behind those coworkers. So, in that sense, it really could impact a culture of an organization or a team if some team members have this like superpower that they're using, this secret tool they're using to give them an advantage over others. So, I think as leaders, we need to think about what is our policy in the workplace for this technology? And we do need to have one because I think we're going to talk about in a minute about the ethical ramifications for all of this. But if you have team members who have like this secret superpower because they have this tool they're using that gives them this competitive advantage, that will impact the rest of the team. So I think we as leaders need to think about what can I be doing, not necessarily to pull back the people who are using it, but how can we help the people who maybe don't know how to use it so it's not quite as like a competitive advantage internally. Now, externally, that might be a good thing, but internally for your teams, how can we help all of our teams learn how to use this effectively?
I think that's a great point. You want to level the playing field with the skills for the folks that you have internally, right? You don't necessarily want one individual to outpace everyone else, and you want to sort of foster this same idea of working together and helping each other learn and growing as a unit, which is similar to a problem we have in software engineering, where you have one developer who's really, really good at building code or good at software architecture or good at cloud or whatever it is that they're fantastic at, and they tend to outstrip everybody else, which produces an artificial bottleneck in your team, right? You start to rely on that one individual. They become the linchpin and the person that has the highest plus factor on the team, and you run into this problem where the rest of your crew can't keep up with this one person. So I think it's important, as you said, to spread the training, right? And to help everyone understand that this technology is here to help further all of our lives and make all of us better, and to, eliminate those gaps between people where I feel like I'm not as good as this other person because they're better at using this tool than I am. So curiosity is a trait that we're all chasing in employees. It's very important to us as software engineers. It's important to really anybody that's building an organization that you want to innovate in, right? So curiosity is something that's incredibly important to the folks that you hire, to your existing talent. How does AI foster and drive curiosity, do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting because in some ways you would think that maybe AI wouldn't provoke curiosity because we could get a little lazy and just say, "Hey, tell me the answer to this." But I mean, I have a 2-year-old son, and he's just getting to that age now where he's going to start asking a lot of why questions. So he's very much in that curiosity stage, and I think AI can actually be a good match for that, where he can ask a million whys, and AI can keep going down that path with him of answering those questions. I think it's the same for us as workers, being curious. AI can maybe lead us down some paths where maybe before we couldn't get that information as quickly or as easily. It helps provide some of the answers for that curiosity, maybe even sparks more curiosity. So I think it's actually going to be a really good ally in the workplace for sparking that and kind of being like your co-pilot or your coworker, your colleague in the workplace by providing you things that maybe weren't as easy to get in the past.
I think one of the most powerful things that I've seen from your large language models like ChatGPT, which by the way is what we're talking about when we discuss conversing with a computer in a certain way, right? Artificial intelligence as a broad term has been around for decades. It's a thing that I learned in school through like k-means and support vector machines and all these really fancy mathematical algorithms that produce classifications of some form, right? So AI is, people who think that AI is a recent sort of Skynet type of thing, it's not. It's been around for a very long time in academia. And one of the things that I have noticed about large language models is that they are so good at allowing a human being to have a conversation with a machine in a way that's natural, as we stated earlier, right? And so the way that drives curiosity in my mind, and I've spoken to some high schoolers about this and a few other people, and this is all anecdote, right? And I also have a 3-year-old who's in the same Y stage. Like they get there, trust me, and they won't stop saying it. So I almost want to just hand her ChatGPT and teach her how to type and be like, here, you just talk to this machine and it'll figure it out. But that idea that I can walk up to a computer and start typing questions in a way that naturally as a human being I communicate is actually a pretty fantastic idea, right? I remember when I was at Tech and I needed to learn something, I would go to a TA. And what would I do? Well, I would ask the TA questions. Why? Why do you do that? Why didn't you think about it this way? What about this? What about that? And that is me psychologically exploring the problem space and creating a mental model of what you should and shouldn't do. And it's how humans learn, is we create that mental model by exploring the problem space, getting positive and negative examples, and sort of creating our own ideas of how a particular piece of knowledge, I need to integrate that into my brain, right? So large language models provide us that very simply. I can ask a question to ChatGPT and it will answer in a way that is human, right? And that's good because that provides me kind of a super Wikipedia choose your own adventure type thing. I don't know if you've done this, Meredith, but I've gone on Wikipedia before and you start at like tomatoes and you end at like who knows where.
Yeah.
It's like you're looking at the article and you're like, how did I even get here? And so that produces that natural curiosity is fostered through a human-like interaction with the machine itself, which I think is fantastic. And so how do we as leaders, and how do we build a culture that supports this? How do we encourage this and allow our teams the leeway to use this technology to make themselves better, do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting as you were sharing that. The other word that came into my mind was creativity, because I think curiosity and creativity are like cousins. They're very, very close. And so I think it also fosters a lot of creativity where, hey, I have this an idea. I'm going to go to ChatGPT or Perplexity or whatever AI model you're using, or system, and it can kind of co-create with you in the sense that you're kind of having these big ideas, and then it kind of comes along and supports you with maybe how would this work systematically? How would I create this? Or I need some more information to validate this idea that I have. So I think internally what we need to be doing is think about those guardrails of, I've heard a lot of companies, like I was working with one organization, they actually had a contest where they said, use AI, ChatGPT, to create whatever it was, this thing. And then whoever has the best product that comes out of it will give you a prize. So they were actually incentivizing their team to use it because they wanted to see what is the full use of this technology for our team. And because we don't even know how to use this yet. So tell us, employees, what are some ways we can be using this? So they were actually sparking some of that curiosity and creativity with their team while still trying to figure out what are the guardrails we need to have on this, because you don't want to use it too much in the sense that there's still a lot of ethical and legal questions about AI. But I thought that was a really cool idea where they were like, you guys go figure this out and then show us what you have, and then we'll figure this out together as a team.
This video is sponsored by us. To continue our mission of providing valuable educational resources to current and future software engineers and tech professionals, we've officially launched the Dev Better newsletter. Our monthly newsletter will bring highlights of the tech industry right to your inbox at the end of every month. Within each Dev Better newsletter, you'll find the top tech news stories, job postings that we believe are worth your time, and more importantly, development tips for your ever-growing knowledge base. If you think this is something you'd read, we've left a link in the description for you to subscribe for free. Now let's get back to the video. I would love to get some psychologists' take on how humans interact with large language models and how this is going to change society over the next 10 years, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because, AI can hallucinate. Obviously, it can be wrong, and it can do things that it can feed into cognitive confirmation bias. It can feed into all of these traps, right? That social constructs and human beings, when you put them in a group, fall into when they're having conversations and interacting with one another. AI can actually make that problem worse, right? So let's talk about the dark side, right, of AI. And you mentioned the unethical use of large language models. How do we protect ourselves from that? And I know this is a very broad question that no one has the answer to, but what are your thoughts on how we protect ourselves and our teams from the unethical use of large language models?
Yeah, I think there's the legal side of it, because I know there's some lawsuits going on right now about where they're sourcing the information that actually becomes the answers that the AI provides. So there's some legal issues that I think corporations and companies are rightfully concerned about, because they don't want to face a lawsuit moving forward. But as far as ethics, I think anytime we have a new technology, there are ethical concerns, whether it was the horse and buggy moving to a car and jobs being displaced, or people could get hit with a car. Any technology has both an upside and a downside. And the ethical side of it, I think one of the things that conscious leadership really focuses on, which is what I'm all about, is conscious leadership, is stakeholders. Who are all the stakeholders that are involved in this? You have the shareholders, you have the employees, you have the board, you have the community, you have the clients or customers. There's all these stakeholders. And I think leaders would be well served to sit down and look at all the stakeholders that could be impacted by the use of AI in their company. How would this impact every single one of them? Would it be net positive or net negative? And so we need to be thinking through, how does this impact all of the stakeholders that our company touches?
For sure. And I think, again, we're just now digging into the ethical concerns of how AI can impact society. And I think we have a long tail on actually figuring out what that means. But I love you mentioned going from horse and buggy to cars and to displacing jobs. Like, this is a common thing in socioeconomic circles where any form of technology that comes in is going to drive change. And everyone is always scared to death at the outset, and they're afraid that it's going to completely change society and it's not going to be the same. And that's a good thing to a certain degree, but it's also a bad thing to a certain degree because, again, you have folks that are uncomfortable and you have a lot of fear in the workplace. And I think the biggest fear that we ran into during the heyday, which is probably 2 or 3 months ago, of Chat GPT and large language models, it is going to replace everybody's jobs. And I've had lots of conversations since then about folks that are like, are you scared as a developer? No. I mean, we built it, so why should we be scared? At the very minimum, if all of our jobs changed, then everybody would just be writing AI code, which is still writing code. So my job isn't going anywhere. And software engineers watching this, you're fine. You're not going anywhere. But there is actually, I read some articles about there were people that were legitimately displaced, right? Through like 3,000 or 4,000 folks that were laid off at a particular company because that company had replaced their entire function with AI. So how do we avoid the panic, right? And some of this is obviously firefighting and sort of having the right culture in place in your teams. But from your perspective, how do you coach your clients on this is how you avoid just an all-out general fire in the theater panic?
Yeah, I think, as you were saying, it's a valid concern because every time we have these new technologies that are transformative, there is some fear and anxiety, and there are people who do lose their jobs. But the cool thing about new technologies, it usually opens up a whole new field of work that we never had anticipated. I think about the crypto space. I mean, that's a whole industry now where you can get a job in crypto, and that wasn't even in existence, 15 years ago? So anytime we have new technology, there is opportunity, but I think we just need to be, as leaders, talking to our teams about what does this mean for us? And you have to be authentic and honest. We don't know exactly, but we're going to do our best to make sure that you have a place at this company. Because if you think about it, most team members, you want them because of their values, their commitment, things that you can't really get from AI. And you can teach someone how to use AI, and you're still getting that innate human creativity, curiosity, things we were just talking about, the ethics, the values. Those things need to be shepherding this technology forward because AI does not inherently, as far as we know, have a soul. It may someday, I don't know. But right now it doesn't. And so we need to have the humans as the guardrails, in a sense, on the ethics and the values and how do we deploy this accurately. So I think people who might be concerned about their job going away, start thinking about, how can I actually leverage this or harness it to my advantage? And my job might shift, but I'll still be employable. I'll still have things I can bring to the workplace because I'm human. And there's things that technology just can never do. So we as leaders, need to be having those conversations with our teams and being honest. We don't know exactly what this means, but we see a spot for you here because of who you are as a human being and how this technology can actually advance your work.
I love that. Do you remember when the Google engineer said that he thought Bard was sentient? Do you remember that? I hate to laugh in the face of a random guy on the internet, but seriously, it's not. I love what you said. Like, as humans, our value to the organization is much more than our capability to produce a widget, right? And this is a thing that a lot of people miss. And you know that I'm very anti-commoditization of my industry. It's a thing that it's a crusade I've been on for a very long time, where software engineers are not just cogs in the machines. Thanks, McKinsey. Yes, I'm taking another shot at you. We're not just cogs in the machine that produce work product and can be seen as sort of interchangeable with any other person. The skills that we build over time time and the problem solving capabilities that I have as a human being are unique to me. There are other people that have the similar problem solving abilities, but they're unique to them. The way they solve a problem is slightly different than the way I solve a problem. I've said many times that developing software is much like painting a picture. It's not really building a thing with Lego bricks, right? And my Bob Ross happy little tree might not be as elegant as Meredith Picasso amazing tree, but in the end, we both solve the problem in the same way. And you know how the saying goes, right? It's much cheaper to retain an existing person than it is to hire a new one.
Yep.
So to me, it makes perfect sense, you know, from a leadership perspective, that if you're in that scenario where you have a group of people, and I have an example on this that I'll go into, you have a group of people that have a totally orthogonal skill set or maybe a tangential skill set to what, you know, how the industry has changed. It behooves you to focus on reskilling those people and putting them in different places. We've seen this many times in my industry. The first being the transition from traditional iron triangle project managers to product owners and product managers. It was a complete pivot. And a lot of organizations that I worked with moved these folks that were PMBAs into the product management space, and they reskilled themselves because the ideas are not dissimilar. It's a similar idea. Instead of focusing on the money, people, time trade-off, you're now focusing on how features go out the door more quickly. And another particular example of this is DevOps. When DevOps came along, it changed our industry because it got us to start thinking about how do we get things into production more quickly. And you have this team of infrastructure people over here looking around going, am I going to have a job? You know, I'm a Linux admin. I've been a Linux admin for 30 years. I know ins and outs of Linux more than any human ever could, but I feel like I don't have a job because now we've pivoted everything over to cloud where it's all programmatic and I don't necessarily have to babysit, you know, my Apache servers anymore. And I think those are two great examples of how our industry, software engineering in general, has pivoted properly and taken the human into account and said, this human capital is extremely valuable. So you know what? We're just going to pivot them a tiny bit, reskill them and reinvest in them. And bam, we have the same people that are adding value to our culture that now just have a new job.
Absolutely. And I think something else related to that, and it's my understanding, you're more the expert on this than I am, but the current models that we have, like ChatGPT, they're based on things that already exist on the internet. So they're pulling all of the knowledge of humans that's on the internet. But what about the future? Like, I know AI can get creative, but humans are the ones that are feeding AI the content that it needs to actually regurgitate back to us. So we still need that human element to be providing content and creativity that then feeds into this, that helps other human beings. So it's like the internet on steroids in that sense, but we still need those humans in the workplace providing that content, that creativity.
Right. And it should not be a secret to anyone that large language models are just a math problem. And you know, the science fiction that it will become sentient, I don't buy it, right? Because I've implemented machine learning algorithms in my career. I am by no means a PhD in this. You know, time will tell and history will tell if I am completely wrong on the internet. But at that point, you know, whatever, just go comment on the video and say how wrong I was in 30 years. But honestly, it should be no secret that it is simply solving math problems. And in order to solve better math problems, it's only as good as what we give it. Like, it can get to a very, very high fidelity predictability, like 99% accuracy. And that is awesome. And it's fantastic. And it's a wonderful innovation for humankind. But it is still, in essence, as you said, just solving math problems based on the input that we get it. And it's guessing what the best thing to do is next. And that guessing framework is based on the inputs and the outputs that we provide the model in the long term. So you're absolutely correct that large language models and artificial intelligence of this flavor will only get better as our industry gets better and as the examples that we feed it gets better. But I don't buy into the hype that one day there will be this AI super intelligence that knows all and basically we become batteries, right, in the matrix. And I don't buy that. Thanks so much, Meredith.
Yeah.
Awesome having a conversation with you. Always love to have you on the show. I appreciate it. Tell people where we can find you.
Sure. My website is meredithturney.com, and I also have a Substack, meredithturney.substack.com, where I write weekly articles on conscious leadership, the workplace of the future, and how you can build a strong culture and a strong team in your organization based in the future of work.
Yeah, building a strong team and having a strong culture is the reason that we have survived. And I honestly believe that you're doing God's work, and I appreciate it. So thank you so much, Meredith. Appreciate it. Like, comment, subscribe on the video if you want to see more of Meredith, and we'll see y'all later.